Hello, welcome to Exposed News Outlet, your trusted source for in-depth analysis and thought-provoking discussions. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're diving into the truth about transgender youth and addressing disinformation and the dangerous lies by the radical right-wing extremists. Before we begin, I invite you to join our community by subscribing to our channel, hitting the notification bell, and sharing our content with others. Your support enables us to continue delivering high-quality content that sparks meaningful conversations. Also, I would like to ask if you could help support an independent, truth-driven journalist, empower a transgender voice in the fight for democracy and civil rights. In today's world, where misinformation spreads like wildfire, and hate-fueled narratives dominate the headlines, independent voices that fight for truth are more important than ever. I am a transgender journalist on a mission to provide quality, fact-based news that challenges the status quo and brings clarity to the stories that matter. As a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I understand firsthand the need for honest, inclusive, and empowering journalism that defends civil rights, equality, and freedom. But to make this vision a reality, I need your help. As an independent journalist, I'm building a media platform that cuts through the noise and provides real, unbiased coverage, especially on issues that affect marginalized communities, including transgender people. The equipment and software needed to produce high-quality content, ensure professional editing, and run a credible platform are costly. And every day I work towards making this a sustainable reality. Your donation will help me secure the essential tools required to invest in professional equipment and software to produce clear, engaging, and impactful videos and articles, counter the rising tide of disinformation and anti-transgender propaganda with facts, truth, and personal stories that empower those most affected, and keep independent journalism alive by ensuring that voices like mine and others from marginalized communities are heard, respected, and have the resources to make a real impact. This is not just about supporting my platform. This is about standing up for the values that shape a healthy democracy, truth, transparency, civil rights, and equality. In a world where mainstream media is often compromised or corrupted, independent journalists have a crucial role in making sure that the facts reach the people who need them the most. Together, we can build a future where every voice is heard, where misinformation doesn't have the final say, and where civil rights, especially for transgender people and other marginalized groups, are not just protected but celebrated. Please donate today and help me continue to fight for the truth, freedom, and democracy. Your support is more than just a financial contribution. It's a commitment to a more informed, more inclusive world. Thank you for believing in the power of independent journalism, and thank you for believing in me. Transgender youth face significant challenges when it comes to transitioning, including the need for parental approval, discrimination, and higher suicide rates. Research has shown that early social transition for transgender youth can result in good mental health outcomes, but unaccepting school environments can lead to greater risk of suicidality. Watch this clip.
Trans and non-binary youth face levels of depression and suicide that are much higher than any other group. More than half of trans youth have seriously considered ending their lives, and according to a study by the American Medical Association, that number decreases by 73% when those kids receive gender-affirming care. A 73% decrease in suicidal ideation is an astounding outcome. No drug or antidepressant even comes close to having that kind of impact. So this really is life-saving care. Plain and simple.
When it comes to transitioning, many transgender youth rely on their parents for emotional and financial support. However, not all parents are accepting, and some may even reject their children's identity. This can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and depression for the youth. Despite these challenges, many transgender youth are choosing to transition at a younger age. A study has found that 1.7% of transgender youth transitioned socially during childhood, while 12.3% transitioned during adolescence. Check out this clip.
The Trevor Project provides crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to LGBTQ teens and young adults. Creators of the Academy Award-winning short film Trevor founded the organization more than 20 years ago. The movie is based on a gay 13-year-old boy who attempts to take his own life after being rejected by his friends because of his sexuality. According to the Trevor Project, in the past year, 42% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth.
Well, I think this research is, first of all, a positive sign to reflect on. There are so many challenges that LGBTQ young people are facing, and constant discrimination and attacks on the political level. And we are seeing that 85% of LGBTQ young people have pride in being LGBTQ. We know that when you see images of people who are successful, when there is less discrimination and stigmatization in society, that helps young people feel proud of themselves, and that allows them to succeed and to thrive.
So which issues do you feel are at the forefront for LGBTQ youth at this moment?
Well, LGBTQ young people face many of the same challenges that all young people face. This has been an incredibly challenging year with COVID-19, the national reckoning on systemic racism and racial violence. But LGBTQ young people face particular challenges that exacerbate the concerns that all young people have. This has been a very challenging year with a constant onslaught of attacks, in particular against transgender and non-binary young people. We have seen at the state level legislators and politicians trying to prevent trans young people from using the restroom, trying to prevent them from accessing medical care, and trying to prevent them from being able to play sports with their friends and peers. And when you see that onslaught of attacks, it affects people's mental health. And so we hope to send a message in this Pride Month. It is important for politicians to be taking steps to protect young people, not to attack and to harm them.
And I mean, President Biden, as you know, has rolled back several Trump-era policies affecting transgender rights. How is the government providing, better protection to transgender students these days? Is it providing better protection?
Well, the Biden administration has taken a few very important steps to protect LGBTQ young people. They've issued a set of policies and how they're going to conduct things related to Title IX. Title IX prevents and prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. And based on recent Supreme Court rulings, the Biden administration has now affirmed that that means that you cannot discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. So this sends a really important message, not just to young people, but to teachers, youth-facing adults, principals, schools, administrators, that everyone needs to be protected. Schools should be a place where all people can thrive, all students can be themselves, and that includes LGBTQ young people.
Is there anything else you would like to see implemented? Are there other initiatives you're encouraging?
Well, there are a number of things that we're encouraging. We're hoping that the Biden administration will take more steps to enforce actions against schools and others that are violating Title IX. We hope that they will implement policies in terms of healthcare that can prevent discrimination, in particular against transgender people, but also on the basis of sexual orientation in the healthcare system. And we know that there needs to be more action taken to improve mental health care. There is not nearly enough investment or support for mental health access and suicide prevention. That helps everyone, and it disproportionately impacts LGBTQ people. And the last thing I will say is that we hope the administration will take more action to prevent conversion therapy. We know that this discredited and dangerous practice is harming LGBTQ young people every single day. It increases their risk of suicide. It does not work, and we hope that the administration will take more action to prevent kids from this form of what is essentially torture.
It's essential to note that the majority of transgender people do not transition back later in life. This contradicts the propaganda and lies spread by the individuals, including former President Trump, whom aim to upset the masses and turn them against the LGBTQ plus community. Watch this clip of Trump's lies and propaganda.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parent's consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.
The Biden-Harris administration has taken steps to support transgender youth, including reaffirming their right to access gender-affirming health care and condemning legislative attacks on transgender kids. If you or someone you know is a transgender youth in need of support, there are resources available. The Trevor Project provides crisis intervention and suicide prevention services for LGBTQ+ youth, while the National Center for Transgender Equality offers resources and support for the transgender individuals and families. Watch this clip.
The principal, vice principals, like year masters, they all knew me by face and name, and they all knew that I was trans. I am aware that a lot of them are extremely transphobic.
At that time, right, if you come out as trans, right, you'll be kicked out of school, evicted out of your house. Most of us naturally drop out of school because we need to find a job to pay our rent, to pay for food, everything. Zero family support.
Singapore is one of the few countries in Southeast Asia that allows for the change of legal gender marker. But this requires major operations, including sterilization and genital surgery, with huge medical risks and financial costs. Trans people in Singapore who do not undergo these surgeries are thus living as one sex while legally another, affecting their ability to get married or even access healthcare and education. As a trans man who grew up in Singapore in the 90s and early 2000s, I have experienced how limiting these legislations can be for transgender persons like myself. The discrimination and challenges that I faced drove me to become a trans advocate and make actionable changes for others in the community. In a recent report that I worked on with Transgender SG, almost 78% of openly transgender students reported negative experiences, ranging from bullying to sexual abuse, and 2/3 of them felt unsafe in schools. In this episode of Rainbow Guide to Life, I want to find out from other trans students about their growing up experiences in Singapore's school system. What issues are they facing, and how can we better support their schooling?
Hi, my name is Chris. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a documentary filmmaker and trans human rights advocate. I only identified as transgender when I was 16 years old because that's when I first heard of the word. But when I was 5, I already knew that I was a boy. When I was 16, I googled LGBT, and for the first time I found a word that I felt described my identity, which was transgender. And before that, my understanding of that word had always only been from the media, where it was always like trans women only. You know, I was the very first trans man that I knew for a very long time. I actually only started socially transitioning along with my medical transition when I was about to enter university. I suddenly changed my pronouns and I started taking hormones. When I left secondary school, I made a very conscious choice to go to a polytechnic as well, where I knew that I wouldn't have to face issues with uniforms. It was a very conscious decision, but I also know that not many people that I know who are trans have had the same experience.
Official government policies in Singapore state that students can only wear the uniform matching their legal gender marker. But they can only change their legal gender marker after sex reassignment surgery, a step most trans teens are not prepared to take at this age.
It's also important to note that Trump himself is pushing disinformation and propaganda towards the already marginalized and vulnerable. And many people take his lies and disinformation as facts in order for him to divide and conquer and push hateful and heinous policies. For instance, pedophilia and sex offenses are serious issues that affect communities worldwide. Research suggests that a disproportionate number of perpetrators identify as straight men. This stark reality is often overshadowed by misinformation and propaganda targeting LGBTQ+ individuals, white nationalists, and Christian nationalist groups, which often overlap, perpetuate harmful stereotypes and smear campaigns. These tactics aim to divide and demonize rather than addressing the root issue and causes of these issues. The consequences of this misinformation are devastating. LGBTQ+ individuals have faced centuries of violence, harassment, and marginalization simply because of their identity. It's crucial that we challenge these biases and promote factual understanding. By acknowledging the truth, extent of pedophilia and sex offenses, we can work towards creating safer communities for all. This requires commitment to facts, empathy, and inclusivity, values that are essential for building a more just society. The hypocrisy of claiming to protect the children while promoting harm and discrimination against LGBTQ+ communities, particularly LGBTQ+ youth, is a stark contradiction. This rhetoric is often used to justify policies and actions that perpetuate violence, rage, and discrimination and oppression. Watch this clip.
here because I think it's important for parents to have a say in what is being taught in school. I think they've totally been discarded for the last few years. And I want to be clear, I'm not here because I hate trans people or I'm homophobic. Not at all. I love everybody.
I'm here today because queer education saves lives. And if I had had the kind of education that can be provided today when I was a kid, it would have saved a world of hurt, depression, anxiety, and we need to make sure we have that care.
Yeah, it's important because it's the kids. What is more important than our kids?
Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are human rights! United, we'll never be defeated! Leave the kids alone! No more silence! No more silence!
Because I'm a minister in a church, and I understand what this kind of ideology that we're hearing across the street, how it destroys lives. I have people sitting in my office, and their children, their youngsters, are on the verge of committing suicide. And I'm there to try and stop that, and to help them to know that every child matters, that they're loved by God, and that their lives are important.
My son, my choice!
My son, my choice!
My son, my choice!
My son, my choice!
Anything I say, we should leave our kids, their kids and our kids alone till they are adult and mature enough to determine what they want out of this life. I cannot press my Islamic ideology into someone's life. I don't want anyone else to press his ideology into my life.
The impact on LGBTQ+ youth. Number 1, increased suicidality. LGBTQ+ youth already face higher rates of suicidality due to societal rejection and discrimination. When politicians and influencers promote anti-LGBTQ+ rhetoric, it can exacerbate these feelings of isolation and hopelessness. Number 2, mental health crisis concerns. The constant barrage of negative messages can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, among LGBTQ+ youth. Number 3, reduced access to support. When politicians promote anti-LGBTQ+ policies, it can lead to reduced access to supportive resources such as the LGBTQ+ friendly healthcare providers, counselors, and support groups. The hypocrisy of protecting the children. Number 1, selective outrage. Politicians and influencers who claim to be protecting the children often remain silent on issues that genuinely harm children, such as poverty, lack of access to healthcare, and gun violence. 2, cherry-picked morality. These individuals often cherry-pick certain moral issues, like LGBTQ+ rights, while ignoring or downplaying other moral concerns such as racism, sexism, and economic inequality. Number 3, using children as pawns. By claiming to protect the children, politicians and influencers are using LGBTQ+ youth as pawns in their political games. rather than genuinely addressing the issues that affect these young people's lives. The consequences of this hypocrisy. Number one, legitimizing hate. When politicians and influencers promote anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric, it can legitimize hate and discrimination, leading to increased violence and harassment against LGBTQ plus individuals. Number two, undermining democracy. This hypocrisy can erode trust in democratic institutions and undermine the principles of equality and justice. Number three, harming LGBTQ plus youth. Most egregiously, this hypocrisy can cause real harm to LGBTQ plus youth who deserve support, acceptance, and protection rather than being used as pawns in political games. I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of this journey. Your engagement and support mean everything to me. If you'd like to support our mission further, be sure to check out our upcoming merchandise, with proceeds going to institutions like the NCAA and the ACLU and other defenders of civil rights. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check the notification bell for all, and be sure to get all my latest videos and updates. And I will put my GoFundMe link in the description box for those who can. Thank you. And as always, be kind to yourself and be kind to others.